Every evening at 6:30, Maria Rodriguez would pack her school bag and wait by the kitchen window for her father's old Honda to pull into their apartment complex. Carlos Rodriguez had been working the night shift at Teknova Industries for as long as Maria could remember, and for the past 8 years, she had been his quiet companion in those towering glass buildings. "Ready, mija?" her father would ask, his work uniform already pressed and his janitor's cart loaded in the back of their car. Maria would nod, grabbing her homework and a thermos of coffee her mother had prepared for the long night ahead. The drive to Teknova's headquarters took 20 minutes through the busy streets of downtown. Maria loved watching the city transform as darkness fell. Office buildings lit up like giant Christmas trees, each floor telling its own story through the warm glow of windows. Her father would point out different buildings and share stories about the people who worked there. "You see that building over there?" Carlos would say, gesturing toward a sleek silver tower. "The CEO of that company started as a delivery boy. Never forget that, Maria. Success isn't about where you start. It's about how hard you're willing to work." These conversations became the foundation of Maria's dreams. While other kids her age were watching television or playing video games, Maria was getting a front-row seat to the world of business and corporate life. Teknova Industries occupied 42 floors of a stunning glass building that seemed to touch the clouds. When they arrived each evening, Carlos would badge in through the employee entrance and Maria would follow quietly behind him. The security guards knew her well and would wave with warm smiles. "Evening, Maria. How was school today?" Officer Johnson would ask from behind his desk. "Good, Mr. Johnson. I got an A on my math test," Maria would reply proudly. "That's my girl. Keep those grades up." The building after hours felt like a completely different world. During the day it buzzed with energy as hundreds of employees rushed between meetings, talked loudly on phones, and filled the cafeteria with chatter. But at night it became Maria's personal classroom. Carlos had his routine down to a science. He would start on the executive floors and work his way down, floor by floor. Maria had her own routine too. She would set up her homework in empty conference rooms, using the large windows as her backdrop and the city lights as her inspiration. Those conference rooms held secrets that most people never got to see. Maria discovered that executives left behind more than just coffee cups and crumpled papers. They left behind pieces of their lives, their struggles, and their decision-making processes. She found notebooks filled with budget calculations, whiteboards covered in business strategies, and sometimes even personal notes about family problems or health concerns. Through these glimpses, Maria began to understand that the powerful people in suits were just humans dealing with the same challenges everyone faced, just on a bigger scale. "Papa, why do they throw away so many papers with important numbers on them?" Maria asked one night while working on her algebra homework. Carlos paused from emptying a trash bin and looked at his daughter thoughtfully. "Sometimes people get so busy making big decisions that they forget small details matter too. That's why attention to detail is so important in any job, no matter what level you're at." This lesson stuck with Maria. She started paying closer attention to everything around her. She noticed patterns in how different departments operated, which executives stayed late and which ones left early, and how the mood of the entire floor could change based on quarterly results. Her favorite spot was the 38th floor, where the technology department worked. This floor always fascinated her because the computers were never turned off. Screens displayed colorful charts and graphs, and the whiteboards were covered with diagrams that looked like puzzles waiting to be solved. One evening, while Carlos cleaned the IT department, Maria discovered a computer programming book that someone had left behind. The cover was worn and pages were filled with handwritten notes in the margins. She asked her father if she could borrow it. "As long as you return it exactly where you found it," Carlos said with a smile. He had learned long ago that his daughter's curiosity was something to be encouraged, not discouraged. That book changed everything for Maria. She spent the next several months teaching herself basic programming during her evening study sessions. When she returned the book to its original spot, she left a small note inside thanking the unknown owner and sharing one small program she had written. A week later, she found a response note in the same book with feedback on her code and encouragement to keep learning. This began a secret mentorship that lasted throughout her high school years. Maria never knew who was helping her, but someone in that department was taking time to guide her learning journey. Her grades reflected her dedication. While her classmates struggled with math and science, Maria excelled. Teachers began recommending her for advanced placement courses and academic competitions. Her guidance counselor, Mrs. Peterson, called her parents in for a meeting during Maria's junior year. "Your daughter has exceptional potential," Mrs. Peterson explained to Carlos and his wife, Rosa. "She should be thinking about college, specifically programs in business or computer science. Her test scores are in the top 5% nationally." Carlos felt his chest swell with pride but also worry. College was expensive and their family budget was already stretched thin. That night he sat down with Maria at their kitchen table. "Mija, your teacher says you're smart enough for college, but you know our situation. We don't have money saved for university." Maria had been thinking about this for months. "Papa, I've been researching scholarships. There are programs specifically for students like me. I just need to keep my grades up and write good essays about our experiences." "Our experiences?" Carlos asked, confused. "Yes, Papa. All those nights at Technova, watching you work with such dignity and pride, learning about business from the inside out. That's not something most students can put in their college applications." Carlos realized his daughter had been turning their humble circumstances into an advantage. She hadn't just been doing homework in those office buildings. She had been studying the business world itself, gaining insights that classroom students never could. During her senior year, Maria applied for 12 different scholarships and was accepted to the State University's business program with a full academic scholarship. The day she received her acceptance letter, Carlos took the evening off work for the first time in 3 years. "Tonight we celebrate," he announced. "Tomorrow we go back to work preparing you for your future." As Maria prepared for college, she continued her evening visits to Technova. But now, instead of just observing, she began analyzing. She studied how different departments interacted, noticed inefficiencies in workflow, and started understanding the bigger picture of how large corporations operated. Her father watched with amazement as his daughter transformed from a curious child into a confident young woman with clear goals and unwavering determination. The little girl who used to do homework in conference rooms was now ready to take on the business world. "Remember, Mija," Carlos told her on her last night before leaving for university, "you've already spent more time in that building than most of their executives. You know this company better than people who've worked there for years. Never let anyone make you feel like you don't belong in their world." Maria hugged her father tightly, carrying with her not just his love and wisdom, but 4 years of first-hand business education that no textbook could provide. She was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. 4 years later, Maria stood in front of her bedroom mirror, adjusting her blazer for the 10th time. Today was the day she had been preparing for since that first night she walked into Technova Industries as a 7-year-old girl. Her college diploma sat proudly on her dresser, magna cum laude printed in gold letters, but her hands still trembled with nervous energy. "You look perfect, Mija," her mother Rosa said from the doorway, carrying a cup of coffee and Maria's favorite breakfast. "Eat something. You need energy for your big day." Maria sat at the kitchen table where she had done homework for so many years, but today felt different. Today she wasn't just Carlos Rodriguez's daughter tagging along to work. Today she was Maria Rodriguez, business graduate with a 3.8 GPA, applying for a junior analyst position at the company she knew better than her own neighborhood. "Tell me again what you're going to say when they ask about your experience with the company," Carlos said, reviewing her resume one more time over his own breakfast. "I'll explain how my unique perspective, gained through years of observing Technova's operations from a different angle, gives me insights that traditional candidates might not have," Maria recited, then smiled. "Plus, I'll mention my programming skills and my thesis on corporate efficiency optimization." Carlos nodded proudly. His daughter had spent 4 years not just studying business theory, but also learning advanced computer science, data analysis, and corporate psychology. She had even written her senior thesis about Technova specifically, analyzing their operational patterns and suggesting improvements based on her years of observation. The bus ride to Technova felt longer than usual. Maria watched familiar buildings pass by, but today they looked different somehow. Instead of being the backdrop to her evening adventures, they now represented her future, her career, her chance to prove that hard work and intelligence could overcome any background. She arrived at Technova 30 minutes early and sat in the lobby, watching employees she had seen for years walk past without recognizing her. "Mr. Johnson?" The security guard spotted her and walked over with a confused smile. "Maria, what are you doing here during the day? Is everything okay with your father?" "I'm here for a job interview, Mr. Johnson. I graduated from college and I'm applying for a position in the business analysis department." Mr. Johnson's face lit up with genuine excitement. "That's wonderful. I always knew you were going places. Your father must be so proud." "He is," Maria said, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "Thank you for always being so kind to our family." At exactly 2 o'clock, Maria took the elevator to the 23rd floor, where she had spent countless evenings watching her father empty trash bins and clean conference rooms. Now she was walking these same hallways as a candidate, not a visitor. The receptionist, a woman in her 30s with perfectly styled hair and an expensive-looking outfit, looked up with a practiced smile that faded slightly when she saw Maria. "You must be here for the analyst position interview," she said, checking her computer screen. "Maria Rodriguez?" "Yes, that's me. Please take a seat. Ms. Patricia Walsh will be with you shortly." Maria sat in the waiting area, reviewing her notes one last time. She had prepared for weeks, researching every member of the interview panel, studying Technova's recent quarterly reports, and even analyzing their competitor strategies. She felt confident and ready. 15 minutes later, a tall woman in a sharp business suit emerged from an office. Patricia Walsh looked exactly like Maria had imagined from reading her corporate bio online. Polished, professional, and intimidating. "Ms. Rodriguez? I'm Patricia Walsh, Director of Human Resources. Please follow me." The conference room was one Maria recognized immediately. She had done geometry homework at this very table 3 years ago, while her father cleaned the windows. The irony wasn't lost on her as she sat across from 3 panel members: Ms. Walsh, the department manager David Chen, and senior analyst Rebecca Foster. "So, tell us about yourself," Ms. Walsh began, but her tone already sounded dismissive, as if she had made up her mind before Maria even spoke. Maria launched into her carefully prepared introduction, explaining her academic achievements, her technical skills, and her unique understanding of Technova's corporate culture. She spoke confidently about her thesis project and her ideas for improving operational efficiency. But she noticed something troubling. While David Chen seemed genuinely interested and asked thoughtful follow-up questions, Ms. Walsh kept glancing at her watch and shuffling papers. Rebecca Foster took notes but appeared distracted. "Your academic credentials are certainly impressive," Ms. Walsh said when Maria finished. "But I have to ask, do you really think someone from your background would fit into our corporate environment? This is a very demanding, high-pressure position that requires someone who understands the complexities of executive-level decision-making." Maria felt her stomach drop. "Could you explain what you mean by my background, Ms. Walsh?" "Well, you know," Ms. Walsh gestured vaguely. "Our analysts work directly with senior management. They attend board meetings, present to executives, and represent the company at important functions. It requires a certain level of sophistication and cultural awareness that typically comes from years of exposure to professional environments." David Chen shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Actually, Ms. Rodriguez's thesis shows remarkable insight into our company's operational challenges. Her proposed solutions are quite innovative." "I appreciate your enthusiasm, David," Ms. Walsh replied coolly. "But we need to consider the bigger picture here. Cultural fit is just as important as technical skills." Maria felt anger rising in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. "Ms. Walsh, I've been observing Technova's operations for over 10 years. I understand your corporate culture better than most of your current employees. I've seen how decisions made on this floor affect workers throughout the building. I've watched quarterly stress cycles, observed interdepartmental communication patterns, and studied workflow inefficiencies firsthand." "Observed from where exactly?" Ms. Walsh asked with a raised eyebrow. Maria realized she was walking into a trap, but she decided to be honest. "My father has worked here as a custodian for 15 years. I spent my childhood and teenage years in this building, learning about business from a unique perspective." The room fell silent. Rebecca Foster stopped taking notes. David Chen looked genuinely surprised but not necessarily disappointed. Ms. Walsh's expression confirmed Maria's worst fears. "I see," Ms. Walsh said slowly. "Well, that certainly explains your familiarity with the building layout." The interview continued for another 20 minutes, but Maria could feel the shift in energy. Her carefully prepared answers about market analysis and strategic planning seemed to fall on deaf ears. When she presented her ideas for improving employee satisfaction and operational efficiency, Ms. Walsh dismissed them as interesting but impractical. "Thank you for your time, Ms. Rodriguez," Ms. Walsh said finally, standing up before Maria had finished her closing statement. "We'll be in touch." Maria shook hands with all three panel members, but only David Chen made eye contact. As she walked back through the hallways where she had spent so many evenings, everything looked different now. The same offices that had once felt like her second home now felt cold and unwelcoming. On the bus ride home, Maria stared out the window as tears finally came. She had known discrimination existed, but experiencing it firsthand felt like a physical blow. All her hard work, her excellent grades, her unique insights, none of it mattered because of who her father was and where she came from. When she walked into their apartment, Carlos took one look at his daughter's face and knew what had happened. "They didn't see your value today," he said simply, wrapping her in a hug. "But that doesn't mean you don't have it. Papa, she basically said I wasn't sophisticated enough for their corporate environment. She made it clear that being your daughter was a liability, not an asset." Carlos was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat down beside his daughter and took her hands. "Mija, let me tell you something I've learned in 15 years of working in that building. The people who judge others by their last names or their family's jobs are usually the ones who are most insecure about their own positions. Ms. Walsh is threatened by you because you have something she doesn't. Real understanding of how that company actually works. But what if she's right? What if I don't belong in their world? You belong anywhere your intelligence and hard work can take you. The question isn't whether you're good enough for them. The question is whether they're good enough for you." 2 days later, the rejection letter arrived via email. It was brief and impersonal. "After careful consideration, we have decided to move forward with other candidates who more closely match our current needs." Maria read the email 3 times, then closed her laptop. Her father was right. This wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning of a different chapter. One where she would prove that her worth couldn't be determined by someone else's narrow-minded assumptions. She had no idea that in just a few months, Technova Industries would desperately need exactly the kind of fresh perspective and innovative thinking that they had just rejected. 3 months had passed since Maria's crushing rejection at Technova Industries. She had applied to dozens of other companies, but the job market was tougher than expected. And each rejection felt like a reminder of that awful day in the conference room. To keep herself busy and help with family expenses, she had started accompanying her father to work again, just like in her childhood days. "I don't mind the company," Carlos had told her when she first suggested coming along. "Besides, it gives us more time to talk about your next moves." But on this particular Tuesday evening in October, something felt different the moment they walked into Technova's lobby. Mr. Johnson, usually cheerful and talkative, barely looked up from his desk. His face was drawn with worry, and he kept glancing nervously at his computer screen. "Evening, Carlos." "Evening, Maria," he said quietly, his usual warmth replaced by obvious stress. "Everything okay, Mr. Johnson?" Carlos asked, concerned. "Just a tough day at the office," Johnson replied, but his eyes told a different story. "You folks be extra careful tonight. There's a lot of important people working late upstairs." As they rode the elevator up, Maria noticed her father's puzzled expression. "In 15 years, I've never seen Mr. Johnson look that worried," Carlos whispered. When the elevator doors opened on the 38th floor, where they always started their cleaning route, both Maria and Carlos immediately knew something was very wrong. Instead of the usual empty offices with scattered papers and coffee cups, nearly every light was on. Voices carried through closed doors, and the normally quiet IT department buzzed with frantic activity. "Papa, maybe we should come back tomorrow," Maria suggested, feeling uncomfortable about intruding during what was obviously a crisis. "No, mija. They need normal operations to continue, especially during difficult times. We'll just work quietly and stay out of everyone's way." Carlos began his routine, but both he and Maria moved more carefully than usual, trying not to disturb the clearly stressed employees. As they worked, fragments of conversations drifted from various offices, painting a picture of something serious happening. "The stock dropped another 8% today. How many clients have we lost? The FBI wants another meeting tomorrow. If we can't fix this by Friday, we're looking at massive layoffs. Maria's curiosity got the better of her as they approached the main IT department. Through the glass wall, she could see at least 15 people hunched over computers, their faces illuminated by the blue glow of multiple monitors. Empty pizza boxes and coffee cups covered every available surface, suggesting they had been working around the clock. "Excuse me?" A voice called out behind them. Maria and Carlos turned to see a tired-looking man in his 40s approaching. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie was loose, and he had the appearance of someone who hadn't slept in days. "I'm sorry to bother you," the man continued, "but I'm Dr. Patel, head of the IT security department. I wanted to ask if you've noticed anything unusual in the past week while cleaning these floors. Any strangers? Anyone accessing computers after hours? Anything that seemed out of place?" Carlos thought carefully before responding. "No, sir. Nothing unusual that I noticed, but we always report anything suspicious to security immediately." Of course. I just had to ask. We're dealing with a serious security situation, and we're exploring every possible angle." Dr. Patel rubbed his eyes wearily. "Sorry to interrupt your work." As Dr. Patel walked away, Maria whispered to her father, "Papa, what do you think is happening?" "I'm not sure, but it sounds like computer problems. Big ones." They continued their cleaning routine, but Maria found herself paying closer attention to the conversations around them. In the executive conference room on the 39th floor, she could hear raised voices through the thick doors. "Attacked our customer database. Personal information of over 2 million. Clients. Reputation damage could take years to recover. Induced competitors are already stealing our biggest accounts." And Carlos was emptying the trash bin outside the conference room when the door suddenly opened. CEO Jonathan Mitchell emerged, followed by several other executives Maria recognized from her research before the job interview. Mitchell looked exhausted and defeated, nothing like the confident leader she had seen in company photos. "We've tried everything," Mitchell was saying to the woman beside him. 3 different consulting firms, our internal team, even brought in specialists from the FBI's cybercrime unit. Nobody can figure out how they're maintaining access to our system. "The board is losing patience, Jonathan," the woman replied. "If we don't have answers by the emergency meeting on Friday, they're talking about bringing in new management." "I know, Linda. But what else can we do? We've followed every recommendation, implemented every security protocol they suggested. Yet somehow every time we think we've sealed the breach, they find another way in." The group moved toward the elevator, but their conversation continued in the hallway. "Sir," one of the younger executives said, "what if we're looking at this wrong? What if it's not about how they're getting in, but about what they're looking for once they're inside?" Mitchell paused, considering this. "Explain." "Well, they're not stealing money or selling information immediately. They seem to be mapping our entire system, learning our processes, understanding our vulnerabilities. It's like they're planning something bigger." "That's exactly what makes this so terrifying," Mitchell replied. "We don't know what their endgame is." As the executives disappeared into the elevator, Maria felt a chill run down her spine. She had grown up in this building, watching it operate like a well-oiled machine. The idea that someone was systematically attacking it felt personal, like an assault on her second home. Over the next hour, as they continued cleaning, Maria pieced together more of the story from overheard conversations. Technova had been the victim of a sophisticated cyber attack that began 2 weeks ago. Initially, it seemed like a simple data breach, but it had evolved into something much more complex and dangerous. The attackers had gained access to customer databases, stolen sensitive business information, and somehow maintained persistent access to Technova's network, despite multiple attempts to remove them. Worse, they seemed to be learning and adapting, finding new vulnerabilities faster than the security team could patch them. The financial impact was already devastating. Technova's stock price had fallen by 40%. Major clients were terminating contracts. Competitors were using the security breach to steal business, claiming Technova couldn't be trusted with sensitive data. But what puzzled Maria most was something she overheard from Dr. Patel's team in the IT department. "I don't understand it," one technician was saying. "The access pattern doesn't make sense. They're getting into systems that should be completely isolated from external networks." "Maybe there's an inside person," another suggested. "We've checked that. Every employee access log, every contractor, every vendor. The breach points don't match any authorized access patterns. Then how are they doing it? Maria found herself thinking about this question as she and her father worked their way through the building. Her years of observing Technova's operations had given her insights into how the company's different systems connected, how information flowed between departments, and how security protocols were actually implemented versus how they were supposed to work. During a break, while her father cleaned the executive restroom, Maria sat in the empty conference room where she had once been rejected for a job. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was now watching the same company that had dismissed her struggling with a crisis that threatened its very existence. As she looked out at the city lights, something nagged at her about the conversations she had overheard. The attackers were accessing isolated systems, but how? They were learning and adapting quickly. But what were they learning from? Then, like a flash of lightning, a memory came to her. During her college programming courses, she had learned about a specific type of security vulnerability that was notoriously difficult to detect. It involved systems that appeared isolated, but actually shared certain background processes or authentication protocols. Maria pulled out her phone and started making notes, trying to remember the exact technical details. If she was right about what type of attack this was, then Technova's security team might be looking in completely the wrong direction. But who was she to think she could solve a problem that had stumped expert consultants and FBI specialists? She was just the custodian's daughter who had been rejected for an entry-level position 3 months ago. Yet as she listened to the continued sounds of crisis from the floors above and below, Maria realized that her unique perspective might be exactly what was needed. She had spent years watching this company operate from the inside, understanding its rhythms and patterns in ways that outside consultants never could. The question was, did she have the courage to speak up, knowing that the same people who had rejected her might be the only ones who could listen to her solution? As her father finished his work and they prepared to leave for the night, Maria made a decision that would change everything. She was going to figure out exactly how this attack was happening, and then she was going to find a way to stop it. The custodian's daughter was about to become Technova's unlikely savior. Maria couldn't sleep that night. She lay in bed replaying every conversation she had overheard at Technova. Every frustrated voice, every technical detail that didn't quite add up. The image of CEO Jonathan Mitchell's exhausted face kept appearing in her mind, along with the desperation in his voice when he said they had tried everything. By 3 a.m, she gave up on sleep entirely. She quietly moved to the kitchen table with her laptop, the same spot where she had done homework for so many years. But tonight she wasn't working on assignments. Tonight she was trying to solve a puzzle that had stumped some of the smartest cybersecurity experts in the country. Maria opened her notebook and started writing down everything she remembered from the IT department conversations. The attackers were accessing isolated systems. They were adapting quickly to security changes. They seemed to know the internal structure of Technova's network better than they should. What am I missing? She whispered to herself, staring at her notes. Then she remembered something from her advanced programming class. Professor Williams had taught them about legacy authentication systems, older security protocols that companies often kept running in the background, even when they upgraded to newer systems. These legacy systems were like hidden doors that everyone forgot existed. Maria's heart started beating faster. What if Technova still had old authentication protocols running? What if the attackers had found these forgotten pathways? She spent the next 4 hours researching everything she could find about Technova's technical infrastructure. Using her years of observation and her college knowledge, she began mapping out how the company's systems might be connected. She remembered seeing certain equipment in server rooms during her childhood visits, equipment that might still be running deprecated security protocols. As the sun came up, Maria realized she might have found the answer. But understanding the problem was only half the battle. She needed to figure out how to fix it and, more importantly, how to get someone to listen to her solution. "Morning, mija," Carlos said as he entered the kitchen for breakfast. "You're up early." "Papa, I think I know what's wrong with Technova's computer systems." Carlos sat down beside his daughter, studying her tired but excited expression. "Tell me." Maria explained her theory about legacy authentication systems using simple terms so her father could understand. As she talked, she could see the pride growing in Carlos's eyes. "So you think you can help them?" he asked. "I think I can, but I don't know if they'll listen to me." Remember what happened 3 months ago? Carlos was quiet for a moment. Mija, sometimes the right answer comes from unexpected places. If you really believe you can help, then you have a responsibility to try. That evening, Maria accompanied her father to work with a mission. She had spent the entire day writing a detailed analysis of Technova's security vulnerability and developing a comprehensive solution. Her plan wasn't just about stopping the current attack. It was about preventing future ones while actually improving the company's overall security. As they entered the building, Maria noticed the crisis atmosphere had intensified. More lights were on, more people were working late, and the stress was visible on every face they passed. Mr. Johnson looked even more worried than the night before. "How are things going, Mr. Johnson?" Carlos asked gently. "Not good, Carlos. Not good at all. Word is they might have to start laying people off if this doesn't get resolved soon." Johnson's voice cracked slightly. 15 years I've worked here. Ever seen anything like this?" Maria felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. This wasn't just about proving herself anymore. Real people's jobs were at stake. Families like hers could lose their livelihoods if Technova couldn't recover from this attack. As they worked their way through the building, Maria paid careful attention to the ongoing crisis response. In the IT department, she overheard Dr. Patel on a phone call with another consulting firm. "No, that approach didn't work either," he was saying. "Yes, we've tried updating all the firewalls. Yes, we've changed all the passwords. They're still getting in somehow." Maria's theory was looking more and more likely. If the attackers were using legacy authentication systems, then all the modern security updates wouldn't matter. It would be like changing the locks on your front door while leaving a secret tunnel unlocked. On the executive floor, the situation was even more tense. Maria could hear raised voices from the main conference room where an emergency board meeting was taking place. "Stock price is down 52% now," someone was saying. "Our biggest client just terminated their contract. How much longer can we keep bleeding money like this?" "We're doing everything we can," came Mitchell's strained voice. "Every expert we've consulted says we're following best practices." "Well, best practices aren't working," another voice shouted. "Maybe it's time to consider bringing in new leadership." Maria felt her stomach clench. Mitchell might lose his job over this, and he seemed like a decent person, caught in an impossible situation. The unfairness of it reminded her of her own rejection. Sometimes good people faced consequences for circumstances beyond their control. After Carlos finished cleaning the executive floor, Maria made her decision. She pulled out the detailed report she had prepared, 15 pages of analysis and solutions that represented hours of careful research and thinking. At the top, she wrote a simple note. "To CEO Mitchell, I believe I've identified the source of your security breach and have developed a solution that will not only stop the current attack, but prevent future ones. This analysis comes from someone who knows Technova better than most. Please consider the content based on its merit, not its source." She signed it simply. "A friend who wants to help." Maria waited until the executive floor was empty, then quietly entered Mitchell's office. She had cleaned this office countless times with her father, but being here alone felt different. The walls were covered with awards and photos showing Mitchell's 20-year career with the company. His desk was covered with crisis management documents and empty coffee cups. She placed her report in the center of his desk where he couldn't miss it, then stepped back. For a moment, she considered taking it back. What if she was wrong? What if her solution didn't work? What if they traced it back to her and she got her father in trouble? But then she thought about Mr. Johnson's worried face, about all the employees working desperately through the night, about a good company being destroyed by something that might be preventable. She left the report on the desk and quietly closed the office door behind her. The next morning, Maria was too nervous to eat breakfast. She kept checking her phone for any news about Technova, but nothing appeared in the business news websites she monitored. "Stop worrying, Mia," her mother Rosa said. "Whatever happens, you did the right thing by trying to help. But what if I'm wrong? What if my solution doesn't work?" "Then at least you tried," Carlos added. "That's more than most people would do." Maria spent the day anxiously waiting, wondering if Mitchell had even found her report, let alone read it. Maybe he had thrown it away without looking at it. Maybe security had taken it as a potential threat. That evening, as they prepared for another night at Technova, Maria's phone buzzed with a news alert. Technova Industries stock jumps 15% in after-hours trading, following reports of breakthrough in cybersecurity crisis. Her heart pounded as she read the brief article. It mentioned that Technova had announced a significant development in resolving their security breach, but no details were provided. "Papa, look at this," she said, showing him the news alert. Carlos read it and smiled. Sounds like someone's solution might be working. When they arrived at Technova that evening, the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of panic and desperation, there was cautious optimism. Employees were still working late, but their conversations had shifted from crisis management to damage control and recovery planning. In the IT department, Maria overheard Dr. Patel explaining something to his team. The vulnerability was in our legacy authentication system, something we hadn't even thought to check. Whoever identified this saved our company. Maria felt a surge of pride and relief. Her solution was working. But more importantly, she had helped save jobs, protected people's livelihoods, and proved that good ideas could come from anywhere. As they rode the elevator up to begin their cleaning routine, Carlos squeezed his daughter's hand. "I'm proud of you, mija. You saw a problem that needed solving, and you found a way to help. That's what real leadership looks like." Maria smiled, but she knew her story was far from over. Somewhere in this building, CEO Mitchell was probably trying to figure out who had left that life-saving analysis on his desk. And when he found out, everything would change once again. 3 days had passed since Maria left her report on CEO Mitchell's desk, and Technova's recovery was making headlines across the business world. The company's stock had not only recovered, but was now trading higher than before the attack. Major clients were returning, and new contracts were being signed based on Technova's improved security reputation. But for Maria, the waiting was becoming unbearable. She had watched from the shadows as her solution saved the company, but she couldn't tell anyone about her role in the miracle recovery. Only her parents knew the truth, and they respected her request to keep it secret until she decided what to do next. "The curiosity is killing me," Maria admitted to her father, as they prepared for another evening at Technova. "I want to know what Mitchell thought when he read my report. Did he believe it could work right away? Or did he have to convince his team to try it?" "Patience, mija," Carlos replied with a knowing smile. "Something tells me you won't have to wonder much longer." When they arrived at Technova that evening, Maria immediately noticed something different. Security had been increased throughout the building, but not in a crisis way. It felt more like the careful attention of a company that had learned valuable lessons and was taking no chances. Mr. Johnson greeted them with the biggest smile Maria had seen from him in weeks. "Carlos, Maria, did you hear the good news? They say the computer problems are completely fixed. Nobody's talking about layoffs anymore. It's like a miracle happened." "That's wonderful news," Carlos replied. "Everyone here deserves some good fortune after what they've been through." As they rode the elevator up, Maria felt a strange mixture of pride and nervousness. She had helped save all these jobs, protected all these families, but she still didn't know if her identity would ever be discovered. They started their cleaning routine on the 38th floor, but within minutes, Maria noticed increased activity in the IT department. Dr. Patel was there along with several other executives she didn't recognize, and they seemed to be having an intense discussion while pointing at computer screens. "The forensic analysis is complete," she heard Dr. Patel saying. "We've traced exactly how the breach occurred and how the solution worked. But here's the interesting part. Whoever wrote this report had intimate knowledge of our building's infrastructure, including systems that weren't documented in any of our official records." Maria's heart started beating faster. They were investigating her solution, trying to figure out who could have known so much about Technova's internal systems. "Could it have been someone from one of the consulting firms?" another voice asked. "No, we've checked with all of them. This analysis includes observations about our daily operational patterns that only someone with long-term, internal access could have made." Maria tried to continue cleaning quietly, but she was straining to hear every word. "What kind of internal access?" the first voice pressed. "Someone who had been observing our workflows for years, who understood how our different departments actually communicate versus how they're supposed to communicate, according to our official policies. The report mentions specific inefficiencies that we've never formally documented." As Maria and Carlos moved to the 39th floor, They found even more activity. CEO Mitchell was in his office with several board members, and Maria could see through the glass walls that he was holding a familiar-looking document, her report. "This analysis is extraordinary," Mitchell was saying. "Not only did it solve our immediate crisis, but it's identified dozens of operational improvements that could save us millions of dollars annually." One of the board members, an elderly woman with silver hair, leaned forward. "Jonathan, you still haven't answered the most important question. Who wrote it?" "That's what we're trying to figure out, Mrs. Chen. The report was left on my desk anonymously, but whoever wrote it knows this company better than most of our own executives." "Any theories?" Mitchell paused, looking thoughtful. "Actually, yes. I've been thinking about this for 3 days. The analysis mentions specific details about building operations, employee movement patterns, and interdepartmental relationships. It reads like it was written by someone who has been quietly observing our company for years." Maria's hands were trembling as she emptied the trash bin outside Mitchell's office. She was so focused on listening that she didn't notice she had dropped a piece of paper until it was too late. "Excuse me," came a voice behind her. Maria turned to see CEO Mitchell standing in the doorway of his office, holding the paper she had dropped. But instead of just handing it back, he was studying her face with obvious recognition. "I know you," he said slowly. "You were here for a job interview a few months ago. Maria Rodriguez, right?" "Yes, sir," Maria managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. Mitchell's eyes widened as pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. "Your father works here as a custodian." "For 15 years, sir." Mitchell looked from Maria to the report in his hand, then back to Maria. "How long have you been coming to this building with your father?" "Since I was 7 years old, sir." The silence stretched for what felt like forever. Mitchell's expression shifted from confusion to amazement to something that looked almost like awe. "You wrote this report, didn't you?" Maria felt tears welling up in her eyes. There was no point in denying it anymore. "Yes, sir. I did." "My God," Mitchell breathed. "The person who saved our company is the same person we rejected for a junior analyst position." By now, the board members had gathered in the doorway, along with Dr. Patel and several other executives. Carlos had stopped his cleaning and moved to stand protectively beside his daughter. "Sir," Maria said, finding her voice, "I know this might seem strange, but I couldn't just watch your company struggle when I thought I might be able to help. I've spent so many years in this building, learning about how it operates, studying business from the inside out. When I heard about the crisis, I recognized the pattern of the attack from my computer science classes." Mrs. Chen, the board member, stepped forward. "Young lady, do you realize that your solution is being studied by cybersecurity experts across the country? 3 different universities have already requested permission to include your methodology in their curricula." "I just wanted to help, ma'am." Mitchell shook his head in disbelief. "Help? You did more than help. You saved thousands of jobs, protected our clients' data, and probably prevented several competitors from gaining a massive advantage over us." "Mr. Mitchell," Carlos spoke up quietly, "my daughter has always been brilliant. She just needed someone to see her potential." "I see it now," Mitchell replied, then looked directly at Maria. "Ms. Rodriguez, I owe you an apology. Our hiring process failed spectacularly when we rejected you, but more than that, I'd like to offer you a position that better reflects your actual capabilities." "Sir, I'm offering you the position of Senior Security Analyst, reporting directly to Dr. Patel. The starting salary is $85,000 annually, with full benefits and a signing bonus to compensate for the months we lost due to our mistake." Maria felt dizzy. The position she was being offered was 3 levels higher than the job she had originally applied for, with a salary that would completely change her family's financial situation. "There's one more thing," Mitchell continued. "I want to review our entire hiring process. What happened to you should never happen to anyone else. I'm creating a new position, Director of Talent Recognition, and I'd like you to help us find brilliant people regardless of their background." Mrs. Chen smiled warmly. "This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking our company needs. Maria, your perspective could help us identify talent we've been overlooking for years." "What about Ms. Walsh?" Dr. Patel asked quietly. She was the one who conducted Maria's original interview. Mitchell's expression hardened slightly. "Ms. Walsh will be attending sensitivity training and will no longer be making final hiring decisions. We're implementing new policies to ensure our hiring process focuses on merit and potential, rather than preconceived notions. Carlos squeezed his daughter's shoulder proudly. Mia, what do you think? Maria looked around at the faces surrounding her, the same executives who had once overlooked her now recognizing her value. She thought about Mr. Johnson's relief that layoffs had been avoided, about all the families who would keep their jobs because of her solution. I accept, she said, her voice strong and clear, but I have one condition. Name it, Mitchell said immediately. I want to create a mentorship program for employees' children. Kids like me who grow up around this company, learning about business from a unique perspective. They shouldn't have to wait for a crisis to prove their worth. Mitchell extended his hand for a handshake. Consider it done. Welcome to Technova Industries, Ms. Rodriguez. This time for real. As Maria shook the CEO's hand, she caught sight of her reflection in the office window. The same young woman who had been rejected 3 months ago was now being welcomed as a senior executive. But more importantly, she was being valued for exactly who she was. The custodian's daughter who saw opportunities where others saw obstacles. 6 months later, Maria's mentorship program had identified 12 promising candidates from employee families. Technova's new hiring practices had brought in diverse talent that was already making significant contributions. And Carlos Rodriguez had been promoted to head of building operations, finally receiving the recognition his 15 years of dedicated service deserved. Sometimes the most unexpected solutions come from the most unexpected places. Maria's story became a reminder that genius doesn't have an address, and that the next great idea might be sitting right under your nose, waiting for someone wise enough to listen.